The Islanders were frustrated after a poor performance Friday, but Saturday they got sweet revenge against the Rangers. We'll have our key takeaways and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com, and you'll win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 till the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey, and we have got a lot to discuss. A big win against the Rangers, a disappointing performance against the Minnesota Wild. We'll have our key takeaways and our hero and go to the game from both games, plus Patrick Roy making some changes on the blue line. We'll break that down and talk about what all of this means for the team going forward. Let's start with Saturday's game. In fact, no, let's start by comparing, okay? This past weekend actually tells us a lot about where this New York Islanders team is. And everydayers are very familiar with the fact that, you know, all throughout last season, I talked about the Islanders being stuck in the muddy middle. And it was frustrating because it seemed like no matter what they tried to do, no matter what line combinations Patrick Roy came up with, no matter who, you know, what the changes they tried to make, essentially they were stuck either going to just make or just miss the playoffs, and it just didn't seem like there was much hope for that to change in the next few years. Well, they're still there, and we saw the bad and the good over the weekend. The Islanders are still in the middle, but because of some of the moves Matthew Darche made, and because they won the draft lottery and added Matthew Schaefer, then you end up with 3 first-round picks after the Noah Dobson trade. You have cap space. You make a few extra moves, bringing in your Jonathan Drouins and your Emil Heinemans in the trade and Max Shabanov. The moves that they make, Jonathan Drouin, end up paying off. And this team is still in the middle, but because you've got prospects, you still have 2 first-round picks coming up this year, they're not in the muddy middle anymore. And there are reasons for hope for the future. But the fact that they're still in the middle was illustrated by these 2 games. You go Friday night against a Minnesota Wild team that had been struggling. Obviously, injuries had something to do with that. But the Wild were not in a groove by any stretch of the imagination. The Wild was coming off a back-to-back. The Islanders had 2 days off. The Islanders were at home. You would think all the advantages belonged to the New York Islanders. And yet this team comes out and just wasn't ready to play from the drop of the puck. And to say that was frustrating is an understatement. They let in 5 goals. David Riddick was the goalie. I don't think he made any, maybe 1 goal he would want back, but I don't think they were softies by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, wasn't a great performance by Riddick. But offensively, they couldn't do anything. Couldn't finish. The passing was not great. Defensively, they just couldn't get the puck out of their own zone. You know, it was like the Jekyll and Hyde. Well, Friday night was the Hyde New York Islanders, the team that you don't want to see very often. And fans were understandably upset about the way the team played and were outplayed throughout that game. And look, I understand the frustration of fans. People are saying, here we go again. It's the same old Islanders. When is this team going to show anything? And then you turn the calendar 24 hours to Saturday, and you go on the road at Madison Square Garden against your biggest rival. And the Rangers are having this big ceremony. They bring in, a lot of the living former players, delays the start of the game, and you think, oh boy, this could be ugly. The Islanders go out and score a 5-0 win. And you wouldn't think that we were watching the same team on Saturday that we saw on Friday. But what this teaches us is that this team is still in the middle, that on any given night, the Islanders are capable of going toe-to-toe with any team in the league. And if they bring their A game, if they play really well, they can beat anybody. But Friday, we also saw that if they don't bring their A game, if the intensity isn't there, the concentration isn't there, if they don't play up to their potential, if they don't play smart hockey, they can be blown out by almost any team in the league. They are still in the middle, but I don't think they're in the mud anymore. And that in and of itself is progress. Instead of, and everydayers can recall last week, the Islanders, according to ESPN, were 26th in the league in prospect rankings a year ago. They went up to second. And if you didn't catch that episode last week, definitely check it out. But that's the hope for the future. But right now, this team is still very much in the middle and needs to play more consistently. If they can play consistently, they can beat anybody. And yet, the consistency is something that has eluded this team for the last, 3 or 4 years? So that's the next thing that they have to solve. And, this is still predominantly a veteran team. And yet I think the younger guys are the ones who are kind of inspiring a lot of the enthusiasm that we see. And how about Bo Horvat? He just keeps doing more. And, 11 goals for Bo Horvat in 15 games. Not bad, right? I mean, he's on pace for more than 50 goals this year. Again, don't think he's going to hold up that pace, but for sure, better to see him producing and getting off to the hot start. And then maybe, more importantly, we are seeing some changes from this team that are, in my mind, a big key to their success going forward. And if this team has any hope of contending for a playoff spot this season, and they could, if everything breaks the way, certain things break the way they need them to, what we saw over the last few games is really vital to them making that run. What is that? Well, we're going to talk about that. One change that we've seen over the last handful of games that bodes well for the Islanders, and if they can keep it up, they can be playoff contenders. We'll talk about that. We'll have our hero and GOAT of both games. We'll talk about some lineup changes. We've got all that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly where Indeed Sponsored Jobs come in handy. They make sure that your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you could speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. So let's go to the heroes and goats of the game, and then we'll talk about that one big thing that this Islanders team really needs to do consistently if they hope to be better and make a playoff run. But against Minnesota, it's kind of hard to think of a hero. I'm going to go with Emil Heineman, who had 5 shots on goal, scored a goal, and was a +1, which is kind of more than most other players on this team contributed. I'm going to go with Heineman as the hero. And then the GOAT of the game, the defensive pairing of Alexander Romanov and Tony DeAngelo. Romanov a -3, DeAngelo a -2. And they just seemed overwhelmed. Meanwhile, the hero of the game on Saturday has got to be Ilya Sorokin, a 33-save shutout. That puts him past Billy Smith into second place on the Islanders' all-time shutout list, just a couple behind the all-time shutout leader, Chico Resch. So Sorokin for hero of the game. And I mean, I don't really have a GOAT of the game. Everyone on this team did more or less what they're supposed to do. The fourth line, again, not productive. They are the only players other than one other skater. There were 4 skaters who were even. Everyone else was at least a +1. And, the fourth line of Cizikas, Ritchie, and Siplikov were all, well, 3 of the 4 who were even. The other one was Matthew Barzal, who, got a point, but it came on the power play. So we're going with the fourth line, I guess, as the GOAT. But how sweet a win was it for the New York Islanders to, get back after being swept last year by the Rangers? And to top it off, you lose that last game 9-2. The Ranger fans were there chanting, "Let's go Rangers." That game, ironically, was kind of the last straw. It was a loss that became a win because allegedly that game is the last straw that led to the dismissal of Lou Lamoriello. You bring in Matthew Darche and you start a whole new era. But to get revenge for that after being, beaten badly every game last year by the Rangers, to spoil their 100th anniversary event, to see Matthew Schaefer get his first taste of this rivalry, same for Cal Ritchie, that was really encouraging. And the Islanders just rose to the occasion. Almost from the opening face-off, you could tell they were ready to go, and that is huge. But the one thing that I think was vital, and we've seen it more over the last few games, the Islanders' defense has played better. And it's not the defensemen particularly, but the overall team defense. And look, in the NHL in 2025, practice time is at a premium. Between travel and off days and back-to-backs, you're not going to practice as often as coaches would like. So it does take time to get a team comfortable with a system and ready to sort of implement that system. And what we're seeing lately is a better version of Ilya Sorokin. We mentioned, everydayers will recall on Friday, we talked about the improved penalty kill. But the other factor is that over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 games, yeah, Friday against Minnesota was kind of an exception, but the number of high danger chances that we have seen against the Islanders has been reduced. And yeah, the Rangers had 33 shots on goal against the Islanders, but most of them came late. Most of them came after the outcome was already decided. And more importantly, you're seeing the difference in Ilya Sorokin when he's not being bombarded by high danger shot chance after high danger chance. His confidence seems to be coming back. He's more alert. He's playing his angles better. And I'm not saying that Ilya Sorokin is back to where, he was a few years ago when he finished second in the Vezina voting, but he's on the upswing. And, his goals against average is now down to 3.00. Again, not where you expect him to be, not good enough, but over the last few games, much better. And then his save percentage climbing to 893. Again, you want it in the high 19s, low 920s ideally. But compared to where it was just a couple of weeks ago, it was in the 840s or 850s. So he seems to be playing better. Could be partially because of the change in goaltender coaches. That certainly does impact things. It could also be that, he's healthier and feeling better. But I think the fact that this Islanders team seems to be more comfortable in their defensive system, that the forwards are backchecking better, that the defensemen are cleaning things up better. What we saw against the Rangers was that until the game was out of reach, the Rangers' high danger chances were not overwhelming. And adding to that, everydayers have heard me say, hey, it's not always how many saves you make, it's when you make them and how you make them. Sorokin is starting to make those saves again. We definitely saw it against the Rangers. What was it? The first 10 seconds of the game, the Rangers had an outstanding scoring chance. Sorokin comes up with a big save. And, on those few occasions where there were high danger chances, Sorokin was able to make the stop. He rose to the occasion. And that's what you need your goalie to do. The deal between the goalie and the players should be, goalie says to the players, you minimize the high danger chances against, and when they do come, I will do my best to stop them. And when you've got that working for you, that is hugely impactful. And Ilya Sorokin showing he's still got it. Now, you got to do it consistently. Same thing for the defense, the team defense, and that includes forwards back checking. It's got to be consistently good for this team to succeed. Tony DeAngelo, not great in his own zone. He's done some pretty good things offensively, but in his own zone, not great. And we knew that. That's kind of the player he is. Matthew Schaefer going to make his share of rookie mistakes. We knew that as well. But overall, as a team, they're playing better in all 3 zones. And again, the next step is doing it consistently. And one other thing, and maybe this is a little personal to Ilya Sorokin, but, his record was 2-7 against his good friend and fellow countryman Igor Shesterkin. To get a win, and a 5-0 win at that. Yeah, one of the goals was empty net. But to get a win like that over your friend and countryman, that battle within the battle that adds a little spice to an already spicy rivalry. That was so encouraging from a New York Islanders standpoint, and it's got to do more to build the confidence of Ilya Sorokin. So that is very important, and that is a key for this team. If they hope to even have a chance at playing meaningful games in March or April, and maybe even sneaking into the playoffs, limiting those high danger chances and playing a more consistent form of defense is going to be critical. And now we'll see whether or not they can keep that going. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We will talk about the change in the defensive pairings, plus we'll preview tonight's game against the New Jersey Devils. All that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Check it out at FanDuel.com. Check it out today. So real quick, wanted to talk about the defense pair changes that the Islanders made. And look, Patrick Roy going to change things up, but these changes tended to work better. Why? I'll explain it briefly. Matthew Schaefer and Ryan Pollock. Pollock, again, like Mayfield, kind of more experienced, more positionally sound, at least in the knowledge department in his own zone. You have Adam Pelech and Tony DeAngelo. Pelech hopefully covering for DeAngelo, and then Scott Mayfield and Alexander Romanov, and Romanov continuing to struggle, and that has been an issue for the New York Islanders. Tonight, the Islanders on the road, 7 o'clock Eastern time start against the New Jersey Devils. So a big division game and going, back-to-back games against your two local rivals. The Devils are 11-4. They're coming off a shootout win over the Penguins on Saturday. Both teams with an equal amount of rest. And right now, New Jersey, 10th in the league in goals scored, 12th in goals against, and both their power play and penalty kill rank 6th in the league. This is a young, talented team. Jake Allen has been really good in goal. He is 6-2 with a 2.29 goals against and a 9.14 save percentage. Jacob Markstrom kind of struggling a little bit, even though he's 4-2. A 3.95 goals against and an 8.71 save percentage. Obviously, Jack Hughes, one of the more talented players in the game. 10 goals, 18 points in 15 games. Dawson Mercer, 8 goals, 15 points. Jesper Bratt, 5 goals and 14 points. Nico Hischier, 3 goals, 11 points. This is a team that's deep and talented, but they need to be more consistent. The line combinations for the Devils and always staying healthy is an issue for them. Jack Hughes, Stefan Mason, and Jesper Bratt are the top trio. Hischier, Timo Meier, and Dawson Mercer are the second line. Andre Palat, Cody Glass, and Arseny Gritsuk. That's the third line from left to right, and it's Juho Lammikko, Paul Cotter, and Luke Glendening on the fourth line. Jonas Siegenthaler, Simon Nemec, that's the top defense pairing. Brendan Dillon and Luke Hughes, the middle pair. And then Dennis Cholowski, Colton White, that's the third pair. Again, the goalies, Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom. Injuries, always an issue, it seems, with this team. Dougie Hamilton has been out of the lineup. Connor Brown out of the lineup. And then on IR, Mark McLaughlin, Zach McEwen, Evgeny Dodonov, and Jonathan Kovacevic, Brett Pesce. So a lot of injuries, and yet the Devils have found ways to keep going, and you got to give them credit for that. After this, you have 5 games not close to home, so it's a big opportunity for the New York Islanders to build some momentum, get that second win in a row under your belt, and head to the, real road trip portion of this road trip on a 2-game winning streak. And I think this game will be a little bit more of a indicator of where this team is at. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Sunday was the 55th birthday of former Islanders winger Bill Guerin, the Wilbraham, Massachusetts native, 6'2", 220 pounds, a first-round pick, 5th overall by the Devils back in 1989. Spent 2 years at Boston College, made his NHL debut in the 91-92 season, scored his first 20-goal campaign in 93-94, won a cup with the Devils in 94-95, had his first 30-goal season with the Oilers, had 41 goals with the Bruins in 01-02, and eventually, after playing for the Bruins, the Stars, the Blues, the Sharks, he joined the Islanders in 07-08 and 08-09, was traded at the deadline in 08-09 to the Penguins and won another cup with them. Bill Guerin, 1,263 NHL games, 429 goals, 856 points, 1,660 penalty minutes, had 39 playoff goals and 74 playoff points in 140 games. And of course, he is now the general manager of the Minnesota Wild. His best game as an Islander, October 18th, 2007, Islanders in Washington to take on the Capitals. Rick DiPietro is the goalie for the Isles. Olaf Kolzig, only the goalie, in between the pipes for Washington. And with the Islanders up 1-0 in the second period, the Isles go on the power play as you had Victor Kozlov off for tripping, Olaf Kolzig off for roughing. That's a 5-on-3, and Bill Guerin, our Islanders' birthday of the day, scores on the power play. Brian Berard and Chris Campoli with the assists. Islanders go up 2-0, but the game gets tied at 2. And then in the third period, with the Islanders up 3-2, again on the power play, it's Guerin from Campoli and Berard. And then with a minute and a half to go, Guerin completes the hat trick. Mike Comrie and Chris Campoli with the helpers. Islanders go on to win this game by a score of 5-2. And for Bill Guerin, our Islanders' birthday of the day, he had the hat trick. He was a +1. He scored 3 goals on 4 shots in 15 minutes and 46 seconds of ice time. Bill Guerin, former Islanders captain and current GM of the Minnesota Wild, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. Get those mailbag questions in. We have a couple of them that we're going to use on the Tuesday show. But if you have a few more, let us know. We'll try to get them in as well. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. And I am also live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. It's great to join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great talking Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Everydayers, we are back Tomorrow, we will have our key takeaways from this important game against the Devils. And we'll also have your mailbag questions as well. So make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.